The Lori Vallow sentencing is coming up. What we can expect. Can we pump the brakes on the Gilgo beach killer for just a second? Mistrials are never good for the defendant. A good Samaritan saves a 13-year-old kidnap victim. Yes, I'm going to give you an example of human trafficking, and then finally, our dumb criminal of the day. Let's talk about it. Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't. Like if you do. Leave me a comment below. Hit that little bell for notifications. And remember, you can listen to us anytime on any of your favorite podcasting apps. Let's go ahead and open the record for July 24th, 2023. And first on the docket is Lori Vallow. Her sentencing is coming up on murder charges and all remaining charges in which she was convicted. And she will be sentenced by Judge Boyce in Fremont County at 9 a.m. on July 31st. So that is next Monday. Well, what can we expect to see? Could she get life? Yes. Will she probably get life? Absolutely. Does she deserve it? Absolutely. Will the judge do something radical? No. Judge Boyce's bold move was to dismiss the death penalty because the discovery delays regarding the production of documents by the prosecution. And frankly, that's just a nice way of saying that the prosecution couldn't get their act together. And let's be clear, I'm not saying Lori Vallow is innocent, but it's troubling that the prosecution had 3 years to dot their I's and cross all their T's, but couldn't get it done. Vallow will have more appellate issues because the defense in this case was so weak. Now, usually what you expect to happen is going to happen in court. But I give you a little bit different perspective than most people are talking about. Well, why? Because, well, I've actually read all the motions in this particular case. Now, let's go back to early January of this year. Do you remember the notice of intent to raise the mental health defense? Yes. Now, remember, the state of Idaho does not have a not guilty by reason of insanity. And the defense filed a motion, and they cited to Idaho Code Section 18-207. And they say they give their notice of intent to raise a mental health defense at the guilt phase portion of the trial, right? You can't do it during the trial itself because that's prohibited by law, but you can bring it up. And they gave their notice of endorsement. So they said they will provide a list of expert witnesses to be disclosed 90 days prior to trial. And they expect to call those to negate elements of a crime. This advanced disclosure is required for the guilt phase portion of the trial, and they filed this back on January 3rd. And the defendant's mental health has been evaluated and litigated since the first filing in this case. Mr. Archibald let the prosecution and court know, and he let them know and reminded them that she had spent 10 months at a mental health facility in Idaho and received mental health care from the experts employed by the state of Idaho. The defense has hired 3 independent mental health experts to review and evaluate Lori Vallow's mental health. And due to the ongoing mental health concerns while this case has been ongoing, the court conducted an evidentiary hearing back in November 10th of 2022 to determine if she was even competent to proceed to trial. And then on November 15th of 2022, the court ruled that she was in fact competent to stand trial. And although still suffering from a mental illness, her defense attorneys noted that she is taking an active role in her defense, and she's previously reviewed all of the discovery provided to her by the state and her attorneys. And she's consulted with the 3 mental health experts, and she doesn't want to proceed on a mental health defense to negate the elements of a crime in this case. She has not authorized her attorneys to proceed with a mental health defense in the guilt phase portion of the trial. Her attorneys are respecting her autonomy and her rights granted to her by the Constitution of the United States. If she's found innocent of the charges, which obviously didn't happen, then no disclosure would be necessary. But if she's convicted, then the defense is going to call witnesses, including experts, in support of mitigation during the sentencing hearing. Yes. Do you remember all that? I haven't seen anybody talk about it. So now comes all the mental health stuff. And 18-207 of the Idaho Code, it says the mental condition shall not be a defense to any charge of criminal conduct. But then in the next paragraph it says, if by the provisions of this section, 19-2523 Idaho Code, the court finds that one convicted of crime suffers from any mental condition requiring treatment, such person shall, which is mandatory in the law, shall be committed to the Board of Corrections or such city and county official as provided by law for placement in an appropriate facility for treatment, having regard for such conditions of the security as the case may require. In the event of a sentence of incarceration has been imposed, the defendant shall receive treatment in a facility which provides for incarceration or less restrictive confinement. In the event that that course of treatment thus commenced shall be concluded prior to the expiration of the sentence imposed, the offender shall remain liable for the remainder of such sentence, but shall have credit for the time incarcerated for treatment. So what does that mean? Yes, Lori Vallow, if they present evidence, which their attorneys say that she will, I'd be surprised if they did not, is found to suffer from a mental disease, guess what? She's going to go to a mental hospital. Now, it doesn't mean, according to the statute, that she is going to somehow get it easy and get out early. It just means you're going to get credit towards that ultimate sentence. But the court will probably consider if she does suffer from some sort of mental disease or defect, well, he may not impose the maximum sentence. I think the mitigation has already taken place, basically in chambers, since most everything for the Lori Vallow case was done in chambers, and we weren't entitled to see or hear that. But like I said, the bold move, and the biggest move that the defense can ultimately receive was the dismissal of the death penalty. That was a win in the eyes of her attorneys. Now, regardless of what happens next Monday, there's going to be an appeal. That'll probably take 3 to 5 years. Then the post-conviction work will begin. And that is basically where they allege that her attorneys were completely ineffective and it resulted in an unfair trial. Join us on Monday at 9:30 and we will all find out together what's going to happen. Next on the docket, can we just pump the brakes on the Gilgo Beach murders for just a little bit? Now, we all know, or maybe most people know, that Rex Heuermann has been arrested for the Gilgo murders. And it is alleged that people are saying that he had a soundproof room in his house there in Massapequa Park in the basement of his home. Apparently, a locked room in the basement which contained guns, according to the police commissioner. Apparently, the commissioner found 200 to 300 weapons in his house, but he only had license for 92 of them. Well, that is what is disturbing to the police. Not that he's allegedly killed all these people and maybe possibly in the house, but that he had so many guns. Just kind of shows you the narrative of the world today. Well, apparently the police are going through the house quite meticulously, looking for any sort of trace evidence, blood, DNA, anything of possible trophies, according to the district attorney's office, because normally people like this keep mementos of significance in their lives. And that's what the DA is looking for, which is not good for the attorney to tell you what they're looking for, because if they don't find it, it's not going to be good for them. Now, let's remember, there's been a lot of speculation that Heuermann may have killed the people in the home and that this soundproof room exists. Well, that came from a neighbor who says he heard it from a police officer who was standing watch, not somebody who was inside. So take that with a bit of a grain of salt. Who knows? Maybe the man had a music studio in there. I don't know. Maybe he couldn't stand his wife and kids and he just wanted someplace to go. So before we get too carried away, can we just kind of wait and see what facts actually come out? That's all we're asking, right? We try to be fact-based. And let's give our opinions based upon the law and the facts that we know, not what we speculate or we want them to be. Now, listen, this guy's got some problems. Apparently, his DNA from a hair from a burlap sack that these victims were found in came back to him. Apparently, we do know that some burner phones, well, come right back to him. There really are no coincidences when those things kind of happen, so it's not looking good for him. But before we get too carried away, can we wait and see what actually took place? Now, we also know that they're digging up the house around Mr. Heuermann's residence, the backyard, and they brought in ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs on the property, while state troopers are describing this as a major excavation, that they found nothing. The police have also searched a pair of nearby storage units belonging to Heuermann. They've also impounded 2 Chevy Avalanches, including an older model that they took from a secluded property that he owns in South Carolina. Could you imagine having a car at another property that you have there in case you wanted to fly in? Oh my gosh, if that's the case, you're all murderers. Now, apparently Mr. Heuermann was quite dismissive of the police. In fact, had no idea why he was being arrested when he was, in fact, arrested. He didn't say much to the police at all. In fact, he asked for a lawyer, which is what you're supposed to say when you get arrested. And we understand that he apparently made no statements because the conversation ends when you ask for a lawyer. Now, also in Mr. Huberman's life, you think he's got big troubles now. Guess what? His wife of 25 years has filed for divorce just a couple of days after his arrest. And apparently, according to police, she's been disgusted, shocked, and absolutely embarrassed about the news, saying that she had no idea what was taking place. I wonder if she knew about the room, if there is such a room. Did she never think anything of it? I don't know. Needless to say, Mr. Huberman has pled not guilty to the 3 counts of murder, and we'll give him that presumption of innocence. And I'm not saying the guy's innocent. Let's just wait and see before a lot of false information is presented out there. We like facts, ladies and gentlemen. Speculation, we could do that all day long, as I oftentimes have to tell clients. But we have to deal in reality, what really is going to happen and what facts do they actually have. Next, a mistrial is never good for the defense. A deadlocked jury prompted a mistrial Saturday in the South Florida trial of rapper YNW Melly on charges that he murdered 2 of his friends 5 years ago. The 12-member jury could not reach a unanimous verdict after 3 days of deliberations. And the prosecutors had been seeking the death penalty will likely choose to retry the case with a new jury. A unanimous verdict is required, obviously, to convict or acquit a defendant of all charges, or any charge to that matter. Anyway, the judge, John Murphy, twice asked the jurors to keep deliberating after this. They said that they were deadlocked, and ultimately, on a third time, the judge declared a mistrial. Now, prosecutors allege that YNW Melly, whose legal name is Jamel Demons, shot Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas Jr. while they were inside a Jeep. Williams and Thomas were both part of YNW Collective, known respectively as YNW Sack Chaser and YNW Juvie. Now, a prosecutor said the shooting was part of a gang action, while the defense attorney said the claim lacks any credibility because Demons and the victims were close friends. And according to prosecutors, Demons, Williams, and Thomas were riding in a Jeep driven by Cortland Henry, known as YNW Bortland, after a recording session in Fort Lauderdale back on October 26, 2018. It's alleged that Demons fatally shot Williams and Thomas, and Henry is charged as an accomplice in the case, and he will be tried separately. After killing Williams and Thomas, prosecutors said the Demons and Henry drove the bodies to an area near the Everglades where they shot at the back of the passenger side of Henry's Jeep from the outside to make it look like Williams and Thomas had been the victims of a drive-by shooting. Prosecutors say that ballistics tests show the pair were shot from inside the Jeep. Defense lawyers focused on the fact that the gun was never recovered. They also told jurors that YNW Melly had no apparent motive for the crime at all. YNW Melly had his breakout album in 2017 and went on to work with Kanye West on Mixed Personalities, which was released in January 2019, a month before Demons was arrested on murder charges. Yes, a good Samaritan saves a young kidnapped victim. A kidnapped Texas teen was rescued outside a California laundromat after a bystander noticed a piece of paper that read, "Help me," written in red ink. Now, the 13-year-old girl was already listed as a runaway by the San Antonio Police Department before she was allegedly snatched by a guy by the name of Stephen Robert Sablon. Now, according to the United States Attorney's Office, the victim encountered Sablon while at a bus stop when he brandished what appeared to be a handgun and ordered her, the 13-year-old, to get inside the sedan. "If you don't get into the car, I'm going to hurt you," he allegedly said. Once inside the vehicle, the suspect asked her how old she was, and she told him that she was 13 years old. She later mentioned she had a friend in Australia, and Sablon allegedly said he would take her to a cruise ship. However, he told her he would have to do something for him first, and then assaulted her. Over the next 2 days, Sablon drove the victim to California. He continued to assault her multiple more times, and then on July 9th, Sablon drove to a laundromat in Long Beach to wash their clothes. He left the victim in the car, and she wrote, "Help me," on a piece of paper. A bystander noticed the piece of paper and called police. When the police arrived, Sablon was standing outside the vehicle, and the victim was inside, mouthing the words, "Help." Authorities ultimately arrested Sablon, searched the vehicle, and found a black BB gun, a pair of handcuffs, and the note written by the victim. Mr. Sablon has been indicted on charges of kidnapping and transportation of a minor with the intent to engage in criminal sexual activity by a federal grand jury. The 61-year-old faces a maximum penalty of life in prison. Little fact here, more than 1.5 million teens and children run away each year, according to the National Clearinghouse on Homeless Youth and Family. And runaways are often the prime target of sex traffickers, as 27.5% of runaways have exchanged sex for a place to stay. Well, here's another example of human trafficking. A Texas Department of Public Safety trooper arrested a migrant near Eagle Pass, Texas, for allegedly smuggling a group of migrants to Houston. The group included 2 children being smuggled to San Antonio. The state trooper, assigned to Operation Lone Star, stopped a black GMC pickup truck for a traffic violation back on July 17th near the border town of Eagle Pass. During the interview, the trooper identified the driver as a Mexican national, later determined to be in the United States illegally. While questioning the driver and the vehicle's occupants, it became clear that the driver didn't know the passengers and the passengers didn't know the driver. The driver admitted that he had received a text message from somebody in Mexico to pick up these people at a random gas station. The driver, who lives in Houston, says he was taking the group to the subdivision or a subdivision in San Antonio, and he said he was not being paid to transport the migrants, and that he had driven 7 migrants, including 2 children, and they were all stuffed in the truck's cab. Needless to say, the trooper turned the 7 migrants over to the Del Rio Sector Border Patrol agents. The driver now faces charges for smuggling of a person. Yes, and that is a crime, even if you don't get paid. You can't do that. If you're receiving something of value, anything of value, that's human trafficking, ladies and gentlemen. Please go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, sign up for a background subscription service. You'll be happy you did. If there's anyone out there you were ever curious about what was in their background, now is the time to do it. If you're going to get involved with somebody, now is the time to do it. When you go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, you put in the name, literally millions of public records are searched, and a report is generated. And it's going to give you a report. If they have multiple social media accounts, you're going to find it. If they have multiple phone numbers, multiple email addresses, it's going to be found. And more importantly, you're going to get information regarding criminal history. Hopefully the person you're searching has none whatsoever. But if it's there, it's going to be found. You're going to get everything you'd want to know, whether you're going into business or whether you're going into a personal relationship. You're going to be able to find out the information you want to know. So go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, sign up today. You'll be happy you did. And then finally, ladies and gentlemen, our dumb criminal of the day. Yes, this Florida man is accused of removing his ankle monitor and then being arrested the day after he was released from prison. The man's 9-year prison sentence was for lewd and lascivious battery regarding a young victim who was 12 to 15 years of age. On July 7th, Albert Lee Gardner was released from prison, but was arrested again on July 8th when his ankle monitor was discovered lying in a trash can at a 7-Eleven convenience store. When the probation officer noticed the device had been in the same spot for quite a long period of time, the officer called deputies, and guess where they found the ankle monitor? That's right, the trash can. Well, they noted that Gardner had been placed on probation or supervised release for a period of 5 years. Meanwhile, Gardner is also known as the Joker, perhaps because of some of his facial tattoos. Anyway, after his ankle monitor was found, deputies were notified of an overdose incident at an apartment building nearby. When they arrived at the scene, they located Mr. Gardner, probably because of his facial tattoos, I'm guessing. Well, he had taken an unknown narcotic, but they were able to figure it out. The little Narcan revived him and eventually cleared away his symptoms at the hospital, where Mr. Gardner was once again booked without bond and charged with violation of probation, along with tampering with an electronic monitoring device. That's code for taking off your ankle monitor, which is there to monitor your location. Well, 1 day down, maybe next time it'll be 2 days. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, he's our dumb criminal of the day. Congratulations, you made it. All right, thanks for watching. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We'll see you tomorrow on Crime Talk.